Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of your communication pillar on your wellness journey. The last time we talked about the drama triangle, which I hope has been helpful to you in identifying situations where you're either playing a victim, persecutor, or rescuer, or you're identifying that someone else in your group or who you're communicating with is playing one of those roles, and that you've been able to then step off of the drama triangle, take that space, create that boundary, and then move forward with solution-oriented communication. The other thing I want to talk about today is also related to being more aware, being more present, being more mindful in communication. And this also has to deal with recognizing that we're not the only people in a conversation or in communication, and that we are bringing very different perspectives to the table often than the people that we are communicating with. This has been presented to me as the 50-50 rule, and it was something that I learned from a manager several years ago when I encountered a really frustrating situation. I was in charge of a project that took months to put together and was culminating in a half-day workshop presentation. And again, a lot of work had been put into it. There were a number of people on my team who contributed to the presentation and to all of the data that we pulled together. And in the midst of that meeting, the CEO, who was one of my key stakeholders in the presentation, basically took over and steamrolled the entire presentation, took us in a completely different direction than we had been asked to go in preparing the presentation and the data. And I was incredibly frustrated. I did not know how to respond to this, but all I could feel was white hot anger, to be quite honest. And I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't know how to handle the situation. My manager at the time gave me some great feedback on this and said, you know, what happens in these situations when you feel like you're bubbling over with stress and anxiety and frustration is you're only seeing your 50% of the problem, right? Or of the situation. You know, what you didn't know was that earlier that morning, the CEO had actually had a conversation with investors that didn't go very well. So he came into this workshop with a lot of stress of his own, worrying about the future, thinking that the direction that he was planning on going was no longer going to be sufficient to meet the expectations of his key stakeholders. And you had no idea that that was happening behind the scenes. So when you came in with your 50%, which was, here's all the things that I've been doing because this is what I was asked to do, and I'm super proud to present all of this to you, he was like, oh my God, what if we've been doing this wrong all along? And I've got to change things immediately. So that situation was hugely eye-opening for me. And even though it was really frustrating in the moment, ever since then, I have been able to take that step back when I've been in a situation where things pivot on me really quickly, or what I expected to happen in a meeting, or the response that I expected after a presentation, or in following through on something that I'd been asked to do is completely opposite to what I was hoping for. I think to myself, I have no idea what's going on in this person's world, and I'm not going to take this personally. This is not about me. And if we're moving in a different direction, I need to be flexible and resilient and take that and run with it. So this 50-50 rule has again become invaluable. And I think it's something that would be really beneficial to share in those situations where somebody acts really outside of what your expectations were. It typically does mean that there's something else going on that you're not aware of. And I mean, this could happen in general life too. You know, somebody's rude to you at the grocery store when they're bagging your food, they're slamming things into the bags and you're thinking like, geez, what did that celery ever do to you? But, you know, who knows what happened to them that morning? Who knows what that person was dealing with? And this is the whole, you know, people will say, never judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. It's so true. And when you feel yourself getting really frustrated with someone else's reaction to what you've done or what you've said, or in a situation that you're also a part of, I think it is very helpful to take that step back and have some perspective and say, this is really not what I was expecting. And it's kind of even out of character for this person. And it's definitely not aligned with what we spoke about prior that I thought we agreed on. So if it blindsides you like that, chances are there's something else going on that you're not aware of. So think about the 50-50 rule. You say, I know what my 50% is, but there's no way I can ever know what somebody else's 50% is when we come into these conversations. So that's the first part, is the awareness. And then what are the actions that you can take when you're in that situation? Is first try to separate yourself a little bit, mentally, and then ask some questions, like, hey, are you doing okay? Because I actually thought that what I was presenting today was going to be received a little differently. And the feedback that I'm getting isn't really consistent with what we had talked about. So did I miss the mark here? Be a little vulnerable, be a little humble, and offer that maybe you misunderstood the direction, or maybe something changed since the last time we talked that I was unaware of. It helps to just start asking some questions and let the other person know that you've observed something that doesn't really jive with what you were thinking was going to happen, but not laying blame and not jumping on that drama triangle again and start persecuting the person and saying, like, you're the one who told me to do this, well, I don't know what happened. It's just kind of like, this didn't go how I was supposed to go. I'm not gonna let this rattle me. I'm not gonna let this get my blood pressure up. You don't wanna feel your body being tense, your shoulders, fists clenching. And that, again, all sort of comes together in this idea of what we mean when we bring communication into the wellness journey. Is all of this can affect your health, right? If you're frustrated and anxious and responding that way all the time, chances are physiologically things are happening. Your blood pressure is going up, your temperature may be going up, your jaw may be clenching, you're tightening your muscles, and all of that is going to contribute to just not feeling good. So what can you control in that situation? You can control the perception that you have of what's going on. You can take mental space and step back and say, I think I need to ask some questions here because this just doesn't make sense to me. You can take a deep breath. You can let your shoulders drop down, and then you can be ready to move through that conversation with the other person from a much better place, again, of being present, being aware, being mindful. So think about the other 50% that you can't see and ask some questions. If the person is willing to say to you, like, you know what, I'm sorry, you're right, I didn't tell you this, but yesterday I had a conversation with the director and they want us to do something completely different. And I'm really frustrated because we've put all of this work into moving down this direction and now they're changing on us. They're probably just as frustrated as you are. So just keep that in mind too, that your reactions may actually be the same, but it's this trickle down effect and you haven't seen kind of what trickled down to this person that's now coming down to you. So change your perspective, acknowledge the other person's 50%, even if you don't necessarily know what it is. And if they won't share it with you, if they're, unwilling to kind of let you know where that's coming from, I guess the last piece would be just to not take it personally. And that will flow very well into our next conversation, which is going to be about the 4 agreements. So keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll catch up with you next time as we talk about not taking things personally and the other 3 agreements that go along with that. So good luck again, being mindful with your communication this week, and we'll catch up with you and hopefully hear some good feedback.